All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Dr. Steffany Mohan. Steffany, it is so awesome to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored.
Well, I'll tell you that goes both ways, and it is so cool to reconnect with you here because it's been a long time since you and I have seen each other. And I know we first met in Joe Polish's Genius Network group, and I don't remember what year that would have been, but it's been a while ago.
Been a while.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I don't know what happened. We got recently connected on on some kind of interaction, I think on Facebook or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, Steffany, I want to interview you for the podcast. And so here we are. And I am just really excited to have this conversation with you and just to have you share your story and your experience around this topic of relationships. And what I want to do is I just kind of want to start by turning over to you a little bit and share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about what you do. And we'll just start there, Steffany.
Yeah. So I'm a dentist. I own and operate 5 dental offices in Iowa, of all places. It's where my family's from. I was born and raised here, my husband too. And we decided we wanted to stay here, raise our family here. It's great quality of life, great area. So I serve my 50 employees. We serve a lot of patients. COVID was kind of a huge turning point for me because we were shut down, which is something that we never really thought would ever happen. I mean, I can't really fathom that we ever imagined that would happen. And so all 5 of my offices were shut down, and panic ensued. Myself and my 50 employees and patients and just everybody. I had people that were I had a doc that was having a baby. I had a lot of people that just were in a lot of different circumstances. So we made that mean a lot of different things, between 50 of us plus our patients and plus all of that. And so I actually used it as a time to shift my my life a little bit, and I stopped doing patient care. So I stopped running a drill during that time. It's been almost 3 years since I picked up the drill. And we don't even call it a drill. It's a high-speed handpiece because it sounds different than what you use in a garage. So we, yeah, we like to stay professional about it, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But so yeah, I put down the high-speed handpiece, and I decided to just own and operate my business and take that perspective. But as a dentist, our major, I kind of shut down my line of production, right? So I had to kind of reinvent myself and reinvent where I was going with all of it. So it's been a really interesting nearly 3 years, for me and for a lot of dentists, because shutting down was kind of the easy part. Coming back online, bringing all my practices back online with so much fear still. Like even after 8 weeks of being closed down, a lot of people still just thought it was way too soon and way too dangerous. And there's a lot floating around there that dentistry was like the most dangerous, place, even though we tend to not really we don't see sick people, right? But it is still, there was this a lot of uncertainty, and people don't, as people don't do real well with uncertainty. We think that we know, even when we probably don't know. And so, yeah, that's what I do. So during the course of COVID, some really extraordinary things have happened, and I'm so happy. I'm excited to share with you and your audience. So
yeah. So, okay. So I want to make sure we don't just gloss over what you just said, about during COVID, some extraordinary things happened. And so does that tie into the people that you want to honor today? It does. Okay. Because if it didn't, I want to make sure I was like,
yeah.
Hold on. Well, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so now that we've got this context set, now I'm really curious, because you know what, as entrepreneurs,
very good at this like exciting story stuff, so I'm kind of excited that you're excited.
Well, I will tell you, and I know I mentioned this to you before we hit the record button, that, being the host of this podcast has been hands down one of the most rewarding things I've done in my 27-year business career. And it has had just, I've had so many valuable conversations, and to be able to share that with other entrepreneurs, which then in turn inspires them to place a more intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships. I'll tell you, this has been incredibly rewarding. And
Yeah.
so what I'm gonna reiterate the question for the benefit of all the listeners. So have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear this.
I can't even really, I'm not going to do it justice. Like, I'm not going to be able to, I mean, I hope that it makes sense to people, but it's not even, it was so life-changing. And it wasn't because of COVID per se. It was just that COVID it led me to the edge of a cliff.
Okay.
That I was either going to go over or, rebound from. So it was a very scary time for me personally and professionally. And ironically, it wasn't somebody that I met during that time. It's somebody that I've known for about 15 years.
Okay.
And she had leveled up. She had leveled up to a point where she could be this person that kind of pulled me, really didn't let me go over the cliff.
Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah. So now
so you're gonna bite.
you did a really great job of leaving a big open loop there, Steffany. So
I didn't do it on purpose. I want to do it when it's appropriate. But yeah, so I during this time had a friend, and I'm the kind of person that doesn't really believe things happen by chance.
Yeah.
I don't believe that things, however people think of it, I'm a deeply faith-filled person. I really believe that God actually plans out our entire life, even though people don't want to believe that. It's actually really freeing. It's really wonderful when this happens. And it's not a spiritual per se experience, except for it became that. I mean, it became that, but it's so I have a friend for the last 15 years, kind of a peripheral friend, somebody that was like, around, but not like central in my life.
Okay.
And right before we actually were gone, when all of my offices, we were on a sailboat in the British Virgin Islands. All six of I have 4 children, my husband, and we were in the middle of nowhere when I got the call from my office manager, and she said, "Hey, the governor's saying that we need to shut everything down." And I said, "Okay, well, I guess that's what we're going to do then." And she's like, "Okay, well, you don't have to come home or anything like that." And I said, "Well, now I never want to come home. I'm going to stay here forever." But I didn't do that, unfortunately. I should have stayed, but or at least for like a year or so, right? But in retrospect, hindsight's 2020.
That's right.
But this person she became my executive coach, and I'll just say that straight out. But she and I had gotten together for coffee right before I went on this trip. So, and we said, hey, let's get together, after, our spring break trips, and we'll kind of, decide what we want to do and all of that kind of thing. And so we did that, but we did it after, everything gotten shut down, and I was in this big panic. And because up until that point, up until I got this executive coach, I thought that every situation and every circumstance and everything that happened was happening to me, not for me, right? Mm-hmm. And was happening, the situation was what I gave meaning to instead of what I thought about the situation, if that makes sense. Yep. So, I know. Okay. Yeah. A lot of people do, but I, for some reason, had missed this memo, this giant life memo that I probably should have had all of my life, and waited until I was almost 50 years old to figure this out. So she patiently and completely non-judgmentally led me through this series of I can only say conversations that led to, coaching, but conversations that led to me understanding that all of everything is coming from me. Everything's coming from my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and my results ultimately are all coming from me. And I always, I could, come up with blame for COVID or blame for, I mean, I didn't really care usually who was in the White House or whatever, but the politician of the moment or the economy or whatever. And what I didn't know is that I was giving away my power constantly. Right. And so and most people don't know this. I mean, I'm convinced that most people don't know this, right?
Agreed.
Because,
Agreed.
yeah, right. Because it's so much easier to blame any situation or any person rather than then own
personal responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. So while this might not be earth shattering to you, Kevin, it was earth shattering to me. Like it was, and it wasn't something that I learned overnight. I've learned it over the last 3 years. Like I've learned it over the last 3 years, and and we keep going, right? But then because it was so life changing to me, I incorporated it into my business, and I let her, or I not let her, I begged her to coach my whole team, like all 50 people, right? So, and I don't know if this will surprise you or not, but my lowest paid team members, like my newest people and my youngest people and my kind of my just, I mean, maybe I don't even have tiers, I guess, but like my lower paid employees latched onto this like crazy. I mean, they were like all over it, wanted to learn about it, wanted to come. And I set this up so that we have 3 hours every month that we get together as a whole team. It's optional. They don't have to come, but they get paid to be there. Wow. So I pay them to be there. Yep. So I'm like, they're not paying for their personal development. I'm paying them to do personal development. And the reason I did it is because I kind of wanted to see if everybody else thought it was so as earth shattering as I did, right? And I in the back of my mind, I thought maybe it would lead to some leveling up with some people. I didn't know, but I mean, I was kind of hoping maybe that was true. But I don't know if this will surprise you or not. But my highest paid people, my doctors, and I have 9 of them in addition to me, so I'm the 10th, but 9 didn't participate.
Okay.
So I don't know if that surprises anybody or not, but and I think I told you right as I was getting on, I'm reading Ego is the Enemy right now. And it's really interesting that I think sometimes the more we think we know, the worse it is for us, right? Yeah. Because then we think that, so then we think that we can't learn, and we think that, or we think we can learn. Well, excuse me. We only want to learn what we want to learn.
Yeah.
So we don't sometimes want to take the hard lessons on. We want to just like kind of take the easy stuff and not really dive into some of the difficult stuff. And a lot of times the difficult stuff is what we think and what we feel and why. I mean, why do we think and feel that way? And that's where the gold was. Yeah. And it turns out that I had a lot of shame about just not being good enough, not being a lot of those of us that have had higher education, we have a lot of perfectionist issues. And not just those of, I mean, like, heck, everybody has perfectionist issues, So, I mean, it could be keeping your car clean. It could be, it just doesn't, it doesn't, whatever you think has to happen in order for you to be happy is a perfectionist issue, right?
You bet.
Yeah. So
I can totally relate. We have a mutual friend in Sean Stevenson before he passed away. And I remember the first time Sean ever told me, Kevin, nothing ever happens to me. Everything happens for me. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And we had a conversation around that. And I'm like, you know what? I want to get to the point where I am that way. And I'm just going to start manifesting that. And I will tell you, that is not the easiest thing to do. because you can look at all kinds of situations that come up. And
Yeah.
if you're going to live that way, you have to force yourself to ask yourself the question a lot. How is this an example of this is happening for me, not to me? And you have to come up with the answers to that, you know. And I will tell you though, that is the most empowering thing I've ever done in my life, because what you said yourself is like, this is so empowering when we decide this is how we're going to look at stuff. And
Sean was the master. I mean, Sean was absolutely the master.
Yeah. And you know, I was just,
because anybody else, a lot of people would have just looked at his circumstance as, you know, as a negative.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
So
so okay, so now, and like, you know, and like I know what you said too about, you know, you're just always learning new things. Like, you know, I heard somebody talk years ago about there's all the things that we know, then there's all the things that we know that we don't know. But then there's this whole other world, which is huge, of all the things that we don't even know that we don't know. And that space is massive. And when I first heard that, I'm like, holy cow. I mean, talk about a what's the right word I'm looking for? A reason for ongoing and continued self-growth. You know, to just continually be on a discovery for more of the things that I don't even know that I don't know, because breakthroughs come from that stuff.
Well, I think some of the biggest breakthroughs are what we already think that we know. And really questioning, why do I believe this? Why is it important that I believe this? What does it say about me? What does it say about me if this isn't true? You know, I mean, some of those things, I mean, and what's really fun is that she kind of comes more from a neuroscience perspective. So, you know, our brain has two major functions. One is to prove us right, and one is to keep us safe. So, I mean, like those are the two, right? And so we really believe wholeheartedly that we're right, like 95% of the time. It's really hard for us to say, I can be wrong, you know, and I mean, like, you know, especially as a dentist, as like, you know, we religiously, and not religiously, but I mean, wholeheartedly follow what we were taught, no matter what. And I mean, like, one of the big shifts in dentistry has been we've used mercury on human beings for a very long time. Like we put it inside a human being's head. And like, still this giant portion of dentistry thinks that it's fine. Like, it's fine because that's what we were taught, and they wouldn't tell us something that wasn't true, right? It doesn't matter if it's true or not true. Is it good for us? And the answer is probably not. And it's probably something that we should really examine. And that's okay. That's just an example of like a million different things, right? And so but it's very hard for us to backpedal on, this is something that I know for sure to be true. And that's about 95% of our thoughts are pre-programmed. 95% of our brain is, I already know this to be true. I know the sun comes up in the morning. I know it goes down at night. I know that, you know, everything that happens in between is pretty much, you know, the same every day. And that makes me feel comfortable and safe, right? But how much of that is just something that we've just swallowed over time and we don't really even question? And when we do start to question it, it doesn't mean anything about our self-worth. It doesn't mean that we're not good enough or smart enough or people don't like us, you know. But I mean, what's really interesting, and this isn't just dentists, this is probably the majority of people, but we're this kind of interesting conglomeration of perfectionist people pleasers that have a really hard time just like shifting, you know, beliefs. I mean, and that isn't just dentists, that's like everybody, right? And it's because we're hardwired to believe what we believe. And it's really, and it's easy for me to say, oh, hey, Kevin, you know, this is one of your things that you could work on. But I don't really it's hard for me to identify the things that I can work on. You know, I mean, like those are, it's much more difficult we can see it for other people much more easily than we can see it for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
then, but then we end up spending a lot of our time trying to like fix everybody else or solve for everybody else, like relationship. I mean, like this is what we were talking about relationships, right? So relationships are a product of how we feel about ourselves. But often we think, well, my husband isn't doing this for me, or my kids aren't doing this for me, or, you know, they're not showing up the way that I would like for them to. And so then it's easier to place blame on how they are behaving or acting or
Yep.
being instead of how I'm showing up in the relationship, because that's the only thing I can control anyway. So, I mean, yeah, yeah. So,
And I'll tell you, so I have experienced firsthand this kind of stuff on so many different occasions of how we show up is what determines everything.
yeah,
And like we show up. I mean, I have been serving high level entrepreneurs for years.
yeah,
And yet, you know, there was a time when what's the right word I'm looking for? I could have been like intimidated by some of
yeah,
them because this is all on me. I put them on this pedestal because that they had achieved so much more than I felt I ever had, or whatever that I would tell myself that would in turn cause me to feel intimidated.
yeah,
But what the reality of what I've discovered is that entrepreneurs, at least most of the entrepreneurs that I hang out, they are some of the most giving, generous, lead with a helping hand people I've ever met in my life.
yeah,
And yes, they may be world class at
yeah,
what they do. They could be the best in the world at what they do, but at the same exact time, at any given time, they
yeah,
have very real problems and challenges that they're dealing with.
yeah,
And when they solve one problem, it's only a matter of time till the next problem hits their desk. And the more successful somebody is,
yeah,
the bigger the problems they have, and the more it's worth to them to solve those problems.
yeah,
And the other thing I've discovered is that the more successful somebody is, the less people they have that they can truly confide in and that they can
yeah,
truly open up to. And
yeah,
and for me, just being able to be that guy and now having had so many conversations with entrepreneurs of that caliber and just being that person for them, you know, I mean, at this point, I don't care whether I'm talking with the president of a country or a nation. It doesn't matter, you know,
yeah.
because we're
We're all
all just doing the best we can with what we got. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. My coach says that a lot. We're all human. We all think and feel the same things.
yeah,
I mean, we all take things in from different contexts and we make them mean different things. And yeah, and then that leads to our results. I mean, you know, so if we, I mean, it's a little like Think and Grow Rich. It's a little like, you know, I mean, like kind of simplicity like that is a little bit like The Secret, but it's really more about all coming from you. Like everything that you are thinking leads to what you're feeling, and your feelings, your emotions actually drive your actions and your results. But we think that we get to feel good about ourselves once we have a great result. And that's the kind of the downfall of entrepreneurs, right?
yeah.
Is that, well, if we have this really great result, but the problem with entrepreneurs is never good enough for us.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We're
Yeah.
always just on to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Well, okay. So I know you mentioned that you wanted to honor two people. So I want
Yeah.
to make sure we
Yeah.
devote some time to whoever
Yeah.
this other individual is you want
Right.
to
So
honor.
my it would be totally unfair. I mean, my executive coach works mostly with dentists, but she works with tons of entrepreneurs too. So
Okay.
her name is Leah Rolling.
Okay.
She is like, and she, you know, I know that there are so many coaches out there, and I know that there are so many people that have, you know, everybody has their unique abilities, and everybody has their, you know, I was drawn to her because I knew her beforehand, I think, but it's because she was so, I was in such a low place and such a bad spot that she came to me with no judgment whatsoever. I mean, none. And she's super intuitive and super, just, I think it's the gold that we mine for is the things that really bother us the most. I mean, the things that weigh on us the most, and the things, and if we don't offload those, they stay there.
Yeah.
And they're very, very bad for you. And so, honestly, if there are entrepreneurs that don't have a coach, I don't care who you pick, but
Sure.
coach somebody. Yeah. I do care, because I think that there is a difference coaching in action and coaching in thoughts and emotion. There's a big difference for that. And I think most coaches learn to coach in action, which is fine. But as really high performance people, we're good at action, right? It's the underlying stuff that we need to really like work on. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the really big, big, big results come from.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we just do more action the way that we do
That's
more
right.
action.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So Leah's a genius at that. And I'm sure there's tons of people like her, but I haven't found them. And it took me a really long time to find her. So the second person, I have a local person here that brought me this, but it's Traction. It's entrepreneurial operating system from Gino Wickman is the system that I operate under now, especially because I have bricks and mortar businesses. I don't think EOS is something that is new to much of anybody, except I didn't have a business system before. It was sort of just relying on my my gifts and talents, and then really it was my weaknesses that were making my life and my business chaotic.
Okay.
Because EOS is a business system that Gino Wickman came up with and wrote a book about called Traction. But he has local implementers, people, coaches basically, that work all over the place. There's a whole bunch in my area alone, so I know that they're all over the country and probably all over the world. But I didn't have a set system to run my business, which meant that I didn't get people. I really, really wanted people to level up, but I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know
Okay.
how to delegate appropriately. I didn't know how to move people into better roles. I didn't know how to get people, right seats, right people. Sometimes I think they were even on the wrong bus, So that business system has been unbelievably life changing for me, because I don't do everything in my business anymore. I just, what Dan Sullivan always preaches is, find your unique ability and do it more and more and more and more. And I think I was looking for that. I was trying really hard, but I didn't know how to lead people in that direction. And so it's been really earth shattering for me. And the relationship, again, that was a relationship that I'd had for a long time. And he started as an EOS implementer, a local guy here named John Leonetti, but we'd had a relationship before, but he said, "Hey, let me bring this to you and your business. I think it's going to really help." And he was right. It's been, really, my business increased 30% last year,
Okay.
which was, a lot of people think that, the economy has a lot of, factors. But again, you put these two things together and you have a great business system, and you have the thought that nothing really is happening outside yourself, or, that, you're in control of your thoughts and your emotions and your actions and your results. And really, like, blaming it on the economy is always just going to lead you down a path that you don't want to go.
That's
So,
right. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the combination of those two things, I've never been happier as a business owner. I actually, if I go back in time, probably wasn't that happy as a business owner. I think I thought that I was, and I just was kind of living in the chaos and just assuming that it was great, and it wasn't that great.
Uh-huh.
'Cause I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. I had my hand in just about everything. My business, I do a lot of marketing for my business. I do a lot of the financial side, but I don't do any operations anymore, like
Okay.
anything. I have input, but I don't make anything happen anymore. I just say, I kind of give the blessing, and then I turn everybody loose to do. They do it so much better than I ever did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's a really beautiful thing when you kind of keep your nose out of the things that you don't, you're not as
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I learned what I wasn't as good at, and I learned what I was, better at. So
Yeah.
that's been
For
fun.
sure.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
you just focus your time on doing what you are best at,
Yeah.
which then is just more fulfilling and more rewarding for
Yeah.
you, which in turn
Yeah.
puts you at your best for those that you're interacting with, whether it's through your business or not through your business. It's,
Right.
you know, you look at your family, your
Yeah.
husband, your kids, and all that. They're now getting you at your best too because
Yeah.
of all of
Right.
this, you
Yeah.
know.
That's right. Yeah.
And how awesome is that, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Oh,
so,
it's changed everything. I mean, you know, and honestly, like one of the things, I mean, God gifted me with two boys and two girls, and I always kind of thought that I was a better boy mom than a girl mom. But part of it is because I was judging my daughters through my lens of like what I should be better at and what I should be doing, you know, and then, you know, if there was something with them that wasn't sort of up to my level of perfection, then I stood in, you know, blame and shame with them instead of, you know, just honoring who they are and helping them through when they ask for help. And you know, I mean, like, and it used to, I my kids didn't come to me for, you know, all of the things that you know, especially my girls didn't come to me for, and they're 19 and 22 now, so I mean, it's, you know, they come to me more than they ever have because they know it's a safe place.
yeah,
And I'm not going to sit in judgment, and I'm not going to, you know, tell them what they should have done. I just hold that space for them instead of you know, I mean, and anyway, like if it's already happened, what's the point, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so for anybody listening to this that is like, wow, Kevin, I just really love the person that Steffany is. I love the way that she shows up. I know you're a dentist in Iowa. And you know, maybe somebody from me who's like somebody like me who's from Seattle is probably not going to go and change dentists and come to Iowa. But there could entirely be somebody from your area listening to this that might decide that, wow, maybe I want to start going to that dentist's office instead. So,
Yeah.
or if you had other resources that, I mean,
Yeah.
anybody that just is like, man, I really like her, and like, what, I want to make sure that we give them anything that you might have to offer and stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mean, we do quite a bit of coaching, and we do, you know, a lot of mentoring and all that kind of thing as well. So,
okay,
you know, the dentistry isn't something that I personally do anymore, which is fine. But yeah, I mean, I just love connecting with people like you do, Kevin. I mean, I think that you're such a great resource for so many people. But if there's, yeah, if there's something that I can do to help somebody else, I'll always do it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the best way for anybody that would feel led to get in touch with you? Is there a
Yeah.
website or?
Yeah, so I don't have like a specific website for everything that I do,
Okay,
but I have a I mean, my email, you can get a hold of me email, and my name is spelled funny, so it's Steff is my email, Mohan, Mohan, Steph Mohan at gmail.com.
okay,
Um, yeah, and you're welcome to get a hold of me there. I'm always I email's great. So
okay, perfect, perfect.
yeah.
Well, I want to just thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart and share some of your experience and anything last thing you want to share before we do call it a wrap.
No, I mean, the last thing I would share is just no matter where you are or what you're feeling today, there's a way. I mean, there's a way to feel better, to, you know, I mean, I guess in at the end of the day, it comes down to mental health. And if we don't protect our mental health, nobody's going to do it for us.
Yep.
Nobody can do that work for you, right? And so my mental health was suffering because I was giving myself a lot of blame and shame for things that didn't need to that didn't need to happen that way, right? And so, I mean, I would just encourage anybody that's at a point where they're just not happy or they're not in a good place. You know, reach out to me, reach out to Kevin, reach out to somebody, because chances are we've been there. You know, I mean, we've been in a bad place. We've been someplace that we don't love, and you know, almost nobody that cares is going to sit in judgment. They're going to just listen and
That's right.
help you find the resources that you need. So, I mean, and I did, like, it took me a long time to label this work, you know, kind of mindset work and this coaching that I've done as mental health work. And I mean, I didn't, I guess I probably did. I had some family issues there, kind of back farther in my family. And so I probably didn't want to call it that for a long time. But at the end of the day, that's really what it is.
Mhm.
You know, it's brain health, it's mindset, it's mental health, it's all of those things. And there's no shame about it at all. I mean,
That's
we're
right.
all thinking, feeling humans, and however you think and however you feel, it's all okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. And yeah, you know, any entrepreneur who's been one for a while has
yeah,
been through some dark periods, no doubt about it, you know, and I have for sure. And
yeah,
in the past, uh, you know, I was more the guy who would bottle it up and not share, you know, not even with my own wife, because I didn't want to bother her with it or whatever, you know, and you know, looking back on that and versus how I am now, where I openly talk about pretty much everything in the circles that I am involved in. And because I don't care what anybody thinks of me. And it was this whole thing of like, well, what would they think if they knew that about me? And the reality is the people that are close to us, when they do know that about us, they don't think, in fact, I will tell you from my perspective, I have had people share so much with me over the years. And whenever they share stuff like that, I'm like, you know what? I loved you before, but I love you even more now just because you had the courage to share that, you know?
yeah,
And I feel like we are even closer now than we were before.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I mean, be sure. And it's, you know, the first time you do it, it might not be easy, but I guarantee you, when you're with the right people, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that worked out really well. And I'm going
yeah,
to do more of that. And so,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So true. Well,
Well,
God bless you for what you're doing. I love it.
well, Steffany, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you.